It's open, but it's one way, right?
Listen only.
Listen only. Okay, we have some listen only people in on the call. So why don't we just go ahead and dive into the agenda for June. So we'll start with, we'll start with the public hearing. Well, let's start on page 9. Just to knock it off while we're on page 9. Item 26 is the CARB report. I assume there's no questions on that. Item 27, this is the request to EPA to bump up Coachella Valley to extreme non-attainment from severe non-attainment. We did a briefing at the board last month. We've done outreach before that. We've done some outreach since then. Everyone's aware. We did reanalyze some of the impacts in terms of the facilities that would be impacted. Originally thought there would be 5 that might be in this gap between 25 tons a day and 10 tons a day that may become major sources. We looked more deeply at the data. There's just one facility that's in that gap, and their actual emissions are lower than 10, so they have some options. So impacts on that side are, nominal, but we haven't got a lot of opposition. The outreach went pretty well. Anybody have any questions on that? I probably will do a very brief presentation since we already did we'll probably just waive the presentation because we already did the presentation last week.
I have one question, that's basically on the facilities, because their entire, I would say, impact is from stuff being transported into the Coachella Valley. And so it just doesn't make sense. I know what the rules are, but it doesn't make sense that a facility that's not going to, they could shut down, it wouldn't impact the air quality, but they have to take measures even though there's no value in that.
Clean Air Act.
Welcome to the Clean Air
I
Act.
know, I understand, but it makes no sense.
Yep. We've gone through this a couple times with the transport and emission reductions from upwind, satisfying requirements downwind, and various degrees of success and not successful. But
Pretty close,
luckily,
right?
in this case, the impacts are not that significant, at least for existing facilities.
Pretty close to attainment though, aren't they?
We were a few years ago. We were just a couple ppb off.
I think in 20 days last year.
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact numbers. It's in the staff report.
I just read the
But we were
numbers.
very close, I think 2015, 2016 timeframe. But then we had this uptick over the last few years.
The design value is 94.
I think it's up to 94, but at one point, the 4th highest in a single year was down to 88.
Yeah.
And we just have to get down to 84 on a 3-year average basis. So we thought we would get there, but
We were at 97, and then last was 101, I think.
not on the 4th highest. I don't think it's that high,
Wasn't that?
but that might have been that peak. Huh? 91.
Now, I would think we would have some major concerns about the scab meeting this standard by 2024.
For the
It's a
basin,
separate issue.
for the basin, not for
Yeah.
Coachella.
South Coast Service.
Yeah.
Because I think we have 80-some days.
Yeah, there's still some big challenges in the basin.
I would kind of guess we won't meet the standard by 2024. I mean, just a wild guess.
I haven't seen it on the sports book in Vegas yet, but get the odds.
Moving on.
Okay, so any questions on 27? Okay. Item 28, so last month we brought the budget, which was approved, and we brought a whole series of changes to Reg 3, most of which were approved, but the one thing that was continued was the restructuring of the air toxics emission fees, so that was continued. We also had a motion that said we should bring back for board option a 2-year phase-in versus a 3-year phase-in. The 3-year phase-in staff had proposed was nothing in year 1 and then approximately 50% or 50% in year 2 and 3. 2-year phase-in would essentially be the 50% in year 1, 50% in year 2. We will present that option to the board. We'll talk about it in the staff report. It'll be up to the board to choose an option. We're still working through some comments. We had another workshop, a working group meeting. A lot of the comments are looking at some of the smaller sources and what's going to be the impact of when CARB starts to require more facilities to report through their regulation. So there's, for a lot of the facilities, CARB is proposing what they're calling abbreviated reporting, which might not mean emissions reporting. It might just mean what's your throughput, like a gas station, or or even a diesel backup might be, how many hours did you test? Those potentially are not subject to this, our Rule 301, because they wouldn't be reporting emissions. So to the extent that CARB's regulation allows us abbreviated reporting, they will not be subject to this increased toxics fee. So that's a large number of these smaller facilities, and a lot of the comments we got were based around that. Now, we don't know exactly if CARB's going to require emissions reporting or something else, but their proposal does have this abbreviated reporting for a lot of that. Now, if they report to us through some other mechanism, we might need some other form of cost recovery to handle that, but that can come later after we see how it's going. So that's been the main point of discussion, other than the timing. So anybody have questions on that? Did I miss anything, Sarah? You want to add? Okay, so the next page is 1106. This was actually adopted, changes were adopted last month, but there was a noticing issue. So all we're doing this month is a resolution to submit it into the SIP, because we couldn't do that last month because of a minor noticing issue. So it's not re-adopting these rules that were adopted last month. It's just essentially a board resolution to submit it to the SIP, which it should be. So any questions on that? Okay. Move back to page 2. Are we letting people comment as things come up? How do you want to do it? I know we ran through some things. Have there been any comments on the items thus far?
But we have to do it at the end.
So we can do it either one of two ways. They could comment on an item as it goes forward, but they're just limited to 3 minutes for public comment on the entire agenda, which is item number 1.
Right.
So we can do it either way.
Doesn't seem like anyone jumped up, so. Okay, back to page 2, some minutes, and then there is a couple set hearings. So the first one is largely administrative. This is, again, an amendment to 301, but a completely different amendment to 301 than the fee increase. This is just a requirement that EPA wants us to get into our rules that has facilities certify that their emissions reports are correct. We already have some procedures for that, but it doesn't quite meet EPA requirements. So we're just making some tweaks to make sure that the language will satisfy EPA. So again, relatively minor. Any questions on that? And then on page 3, this is ongoing amendments to our reclaim rules, our Reg 20 rules. And we had originally thought we were going to amend 2 rules, 2001 and 2015. The amendments to 2001 were based on EPA's direction, that not to allow facilities to exit until we have a bigger package of what all the landing rules look like. So while we had allowed some exit provisions, we're going to be closing that, at least for now. And then second, we had proposed some amendments to 2015. 2015 had some backstop provisions in reclaim. If certain things went off on the market where we'd have to make some adjustments, we had originally proposed to kind of modernize those to match. Now that we know that reclaim's being sunset, some of those we didn't think made sense, but we got some comments that from stakeholders that there was some lack of clarity there. So actually right now we're probably going to pull the 2015 portion of this and just do the 2001 portion of this. And if it needs amendments in the future, we'll continue to work on that. But right, it's not critical we get those done now. And we were doing it to try to provide facilities some certainty, and that some of these antiquated provisions wouldn't inadvertently kick in, but they had some concerns, so we don't need to do it now.
Ron had a question.
Yeah.
Well, what about the shade requirement that we had? Are these facilities now required to start reducing their emissions?
If you're in reclaim, you have to meet your allocation or buy credits, just like you always have.
And I know the emission fee reporting is in, are those in reclaim still complying and reducing their emissions per shade requirement?
Yeah, I mean, the program is still, we haven't had, emissions above the allocation, so we constantly check that. It doesn't have much to do with the fee rule, but it definitely, it will get tighter in the next few years. If you remember, that shade was backloaded considerably, so the next few years.
When does it start getting tighter?
It's probably next year, 2020, 2021, it kicks in much more than, there was an early shave and I think they skipped, I can't remember the exact. I think there was a shave in the first year, then it skipped, and then it kind of ramped up in the later years. So facilities will be subject to that as long as they're in reclaim. They will also be subject to landing rules. Hopefully that's a parallel path of reducing emissions for both purposes.
Oh, I'm trying to remember the numbers. So before the shave, it was 26 tons,
26.5.
and then we did 12 tons, right? Which is, I can't do arithmetic in my head, 14.
14.5.
And then there's discussion of another.
That's a tough one.
I went to public school.
Me too.
And then there's discussion later of another 5 tons. Is that on top of the 12-ton shave, or is that
Yes.
captured within that?
That's an AQMP measure commitment versus an adopted rule commitment. So we still have that AQMP commitment to get another 5 tons by 2025.
So to get down to 9.
9, kind of the end target in 2025 per our board, setting aside AB 617, is 9.5 tons of actual emissions by 2025.
Okay.
My recollection is there were 26 ton, and the actual was like
19 or 20 or something.
19 tons.
Yeah, so
So it was like 7
if
tons.
we close that gap, it'll make it easier to get to 9.5. Any other questions on this? This shouldn't be terribly controversial. Okay, next item, page 4 is another set hearing. This is what we do every year to update our Reg 9 and Reg 10 to reflect any changes in the changes to the federal NESHAPs or NSPS. So every year or two, we go through and look at all the changes and incorporate them by reference, because we do have delegation from EPA on these federal rules. So, I mean, the staff report will talk about each rule. There's nothing that significant of these changes, but we did take a closer look to see if there were any rollbacks that would affect us, and there was nothing significant. So any questions on that? Okay, so Matt, Naveen, you have the
Yeah,
next 2 items.
covered item 3 to 5. So item number 3 is just a couple of areas that relate to electric vehicle charging. The first is to establish a 3-year contract for the operation and maintenance of the network software and chargers. The 92 chargers are at the South Coast facility that were installed about 18 months ago. And then in addition to that maintenance program, we're also seeking board's approval to recover or increase the cost of the charging of vehicles, both to the public and the staff at the South Coast. About 18 months ago, we started a very low-cost charging program, and we're hoping to get approval to increase that and also provide the executive officer with the ability to periodically adjust those fees based on the latest electricity cost to us. So it's all about the recovery of those particular charges for us. Lastly, the item also includes a $42,000 adjustment necessary to pay for the total cost of installing 10 DC fast chargers that went in all across the South Coast Basin, one of which is in our parking lot as well. And then, as you may recall, last fall, CEC initiated a stop work order and declined to staff is requesting the additional funds to cover the remaining balance under the contract with
So being a dinosaur who still drives a gasoline car, is like a card swipe or something like that?
On the.
How about EV chargers?
Yeah, so there's two options. One is an app that's available to be able to control it with your phone. And the other is an RFID card that you can use to initiate that charge.
How much are you charging again?
Right now is 6 cents a kilowatt hour. With this proposal, we're seeking approval to add $1 per hour beyond their normal charging time. People
So once you get to 4
move their
hours.
cars, yeah. And then we'll look at our electricity costs and see how much recovery that additional fee would give us, and then perhaps come back and do it.
So this is not fully covered yet, we need to look at that down the road.
Precisely.
Any other questions on that one?
So item number 4 is to recognize up to $75,000 in revenue from grid alternatives. Grid alternatives is an entity that was selected by ARB to run their one-stop shop pilot program that basically focuses on outreach to low-income residents for clean transportation programs, such as the Replace Your Ride that we implement in the South Coast. So with those recognized funds, staff plans to work to get into a contract with grid alternatives and work with them on integrating the Replace Your Ride program into this one-stop shop program in the state. It's a relatively straightforward perspective, but I can address any questions.
I finally looked at the website, it's really nice. Replace your
Yeah.
website, I finally looked at it this morning.
We're continuing to improve it, but yeah, thank you. Item number 5 is to recognize up to about $1.9 million from ARB's Farmer or Funding Agricultural Replacement Measures for Emission Reduction Program, with approximately $113,000 for administrative fees to implement it. Staff has conducted some pretty extensive outreach, especially focusing on the Coachella Valley to inform local ag operators about that funding program. Additionally, in this item, we're seeking the board's approval to revise some previous awards to correctly identify repower versus replacement, and as well as one electric school bus infrastructure award. And these were made under Carl Moyer soon, and there's no cost impact for the replacement to repower projects, but there is an additional $275,000 we're seeking for approval for banning Unified School District and their infrastructure award. And with that, if I can answer the question.
All right, next item, Jason.
Sure. So this is a routine item, and the item is to recognize almost about $3 million in funds from the US EPA and also the US government, and transfer and appropriate those funds for the related air monitoring programs. It is also to transfer and appropriate some money for the community air monitoring portion of the refinery community air monitoring, and also to issue solicitations for and purchase orders for air monitoring equipment and one vehicle. After that, answer any questions.
This is a vehicle loaded with sensors that we can.
This vehicle is not, this is more of a support vehicle to carry air monitoring and calibration equipment. We have other vehicles for that and other equipment.
Any questions for Jason? Okay, page 6, item 7, Lisa is here.
Good morning. So this item specifically seeks to engage community leaders in disadvantaged and environmental justice communities to raise air quality awareness and also to discuss the pending attainment deadlines for the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. It's an opportunity to meet with key stakeholders in these environmental justice and disadvantaged communities on a more intimate basis through a series of 6 meetings. And the goal is for them to then be able to discuss issues with their communities and as the thought leaders help us raise awareness overall. It is a sole source contract for 2 different public relations firms who are both experts in their respective communities and air quality issues. And with that, I'll take any questions.
I have a question. Have you identified those 6 communities?
So we haven't drilled down to that level, but these particular firms have a lot of expertise within the urban areas, our environmental justice and disadvantaged areas. Any other questions?
Well, the program is focused on meeting the clean air standard, correct?
Well,
Basically.
raising air quality awareness and our challenges to meet the
Yeah,
standards.
so it's based on the ambient standards. So, what is staff's recommendation regarding which areas you would be focusing on? I would think staff would be providing these two firms some guidance.
Direction, yeah, absolutely. So Bakewell Media, they're the largest African-American owned newspaper within our jurisdiction. And so they have access to a lot of our key communities within Los Angeles and beyond. So that will be the focus there. Cordova has even broader influence. We've worked with them for many years in the past, and their expertise goes beyond there. And we'll target other environmental justice communities in the jurisdiction.
Any other questions for Lisa? Okay, John, you have the next 4 items.
Good morning. Item 8 is the proposal to execute a lease agreement with the current operators of our child care center. The current operators have been running the center since 2004. We've done some evaluation and conducted a survey of the parents of the children currently at the child care center. The results have been overwhelmingly positive, so we're recommending a new 10-year lease with the Carrera company at an annual lease payment of $44,000 a year with provisions in there for 2% increases each year and an option to extend the contract for an additional 2 years. I'm happy to answer any questions. Not. Item number 9 is a routine service contract for maintenance, service, and repairs of our HVAC units. This is a proposal for a 3-year contract with KLM. KLM has serviced our equipment here for the past 6 years, and our recommendation is to enter into a contract with them for another 3 years. Any questions? Not. The next 2 items are for landscaping maintenance services and tree trimming and plant care services. These 2 items were, a question was raised at the administrative committee, and it was asked whether the proposed contractor would be using low-emission vehicles in performing the contract. And the recommendation of the administrative committee was conditioned on the board chair's review on the question. So the landscaping contractor that's being proposed, Tropical Plaza, has stated that he would agree to purchase a new diesel truck upon approval of this contract, one that's higher fuel efficiency rated. The tree trimming contractor that's being proposed they do not currently have a low emission truck in their fleet. They don't currently have a plan to add one, but they would, if they did procure one, they would use it for this contract. So if this item is moved to the full board by the chair, we would recommend approval of both contractors for both of these items. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so next on page 7, item 12, Ron, Mark, sorry.
Sure. Ron Duffy. So this is a routine item to amend contract for short and long-term system development and maintenance and support services. The funds are included in this fiscal year's budget. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Again, I'd just like to say how happy Councilman Benoit, Vice Chair, is with the progress. He's really pleased with what's going on here. I just want to continually remind you guys that you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Thanks for the sure.
I don't see Denise here for item 13, so I don't have all the details on that, Jill.
Sure. So basically, at the board retreat afterwards, they interviewed one of the candidates for the medical member. They only had 2 candidates. One was the incumbent, Dr. Lerner, and one was a new person. So the recommendation is to appoint the current medical member, Dr. Lerner, with this new gentleman, I'm sorry, I cannot remember his name, but he's very well qualified, as the alternate. So that's the recommendation that's going forward.
Questions on that? Okay, we're on to the reports on the bottom of page 7. Any questions on items 14 or 15?
I have a suggestion on 14. When I went through it, there was a lot of interesting news coverage. And it'd be nice if there was a link on your homepage or something to report that actually had those clips. I mean, every day at the county, we get clips on our email of any story that references the county or is just of interest to the county. And a lot of that stuff looked really interesting, but I have to work way too hard to access it. So just an idea to throw out there to have. Or I've seen
Do you see the
agencies
daily,
will have, pardon?
do you see the daily summary of events where South Coast AQMD is mentioned?
Does that not go out to the board systems?
No?
Okay,
We get that internally.
yeah, we can get that out to you guys. So you'll see what we see.
Okay.
It's not
That'd be
necessarily
more timely,
publicly,
too.
we can always
Yeah.
forward the email, but it's meant, this was for internal staff.
Same thing with our clips, because there's a lot of, the worst people ever, Even though it's in a public newspaper, it's.
Yeah.
we can
They want to
get-
remind you that.
So
Also,
Andy,
there
would
were-
that be okay if it's the daily as
Yeah, that'd
opposed
be-
to like a summarize, because a summary would be huge
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
and diligent.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we'll
There was
add,
a big, long, interesting story in the Grist magazine about San Bernardino, a lot of familiar names in there. So I don't know if everybody saw it, but that's,
that was just yesterday.
I didn't even know what the Grist was, and it's like,
Yesterday, the day before.
a long, interesting story about San Bernardino with a lot of familiar names in
Warehousing,
it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so we can add the board assistant email to
Yeah.
that list, right?
I'll add it. I'll have it added.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Because I need more stuff to read.
Yeah, thanks.
Clutter up your inbox even more. Okay, nothing on 14 or 15?
Sorry?
Okay, page 8. Anything on items 16 through 19?
Anything on control measure forecast?
I think there's a few, I missed the meetings with Susan lately. I think there might be a few delays, I don't have it in front of me, but we'll see it tomorrow. Okay, so onto the board calendar, items 21 to 25. Any questions there? I think we already covered item 26 and the rest of the agenda. So, efficient meeting. Any other business? Any member of the committee wants to bring up?
Any public comment?
Any public comment? Harvey?
What's up, Marty?
Good morning. I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. Basically, I heard from Dr. Burke that something's going on with solar policy. And I cited this at the meeting on the 3rd. And Dr. Burke said something to the effect that I should talk to Wayne, but he said that Wayne has, I think he used the word, been converted. Anyway, I'd like to know more about that and what's happening. And also, has Dr. Phillip been converted as well?
Whatever Dr. Brooks says.
Anyway, I know you had your retreat. I don't know if this was brought up in the retreat or what. And when Dr. Burke told me about this, I was eating breakfast before the meeting, and he said, "Oh, we're going to do something." He said something kind of qualifying it. It should be all right. So it's got me worried. Anyway, what's up?
Are you done commenting, and I'll respond to you when you're done?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so I recently attended the National Association of Clean Air Agencies, and one of the presentations that was made was from an air district in Iowa. And what that air district did was, in essence, develop I'll call it a solar buy. And what they did was they worked with different contractors and negotiated preferred rates based on quantity. And then what they did was they reached out to the community and said, based on what we've been able to negotiate in terms of numbers, we were able to look at these preferred rates that would help. So that was what the presentation was, and the concept is there something similar that we can look at to develop and implement here? We have other ideas that would sort of build on that. I'm not quite ready to go into detail on that, but the concept would be threefold. One, can we help negotiate preferred rates? And then two, can we work with other agencies to look at potential funding to help offset whatever those preferred rates are? And then are there other policy issues that we could look at in conjunction with other agencies to further enhance the enticement of organizations to avail themselves to that? So that's sort of the broad concept. And right now staff's working on putting that plan together, but we're excited because we think it would actually accomplish a lot of things that you've been advocating for, Harvey.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear something's going on, but what's the timeline in the future?
So staff's working on the issue, and I would say that probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be able to come to some kind of point where I think we could share either with committee or with the board.
Right. I was going to ask something else, but I can't remember now. When was this meeting held?
The NACA meeting was held in April, I believe.
April. Okay. Well.
Late April.
Okay. We've been putting together. We put in an information request to get everything put into the 16 plan, the Solar New Deal, which had like 50 exhibits. So we got the 5,000 pages and we got some thumb drives, and we're going through, there's 66 different items from like 100 to 500 pages, and we're going through that and trying, to say what was and what not. So that's in progress. And it was that is part of the response, incorporating by reference the February 8th meeting of the administrative committee. It was at 10 a.m., 51 minutes, about a quarter of it was with me, Dr. Burke, and you. So anyway, working on that. Dr. Burke said, well, give me what you got. And he said, but I'm not going to read 800 pages. So.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Is this one of the ones, huh?